back to another deck profile video. So this time we're finally able to show the Avian deck. So just to get started with, we'll start with the new eggs for this particular deck as seen in BT15. Go with Yokomon. On deletion effect, turn one Digimon card with Avian, bird, beast, animal or sovereign other than sea animal. In one of its traits from your trash back to hand, which is a very handy card to have, especially, don't get me wrong, I do still like the old Yokomon, but this just gels much better with this deck. So a mandatory 4-off is what I find is fine with this one. Level 3s. Now, we only run 12. And as you probably have guessed, it's going to be basically a Biomon lineup. So first four, we start with the BT11 Biomon, which is essentially your searcher. You reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. You add a Digimon with vaccine in its traits and a red tamer to your hand. So it's just a mandatory 4-off just to try and get the pieces you need. It's definitely a turn 1 card. Just to get the ball rolling, and it's inherited on deletion. If you have a red tamer in play, you gain a memory. It's actually quite cool as well, because in some cases you might find your opponent's turn, they might be on 0 memory. They delete you, you gain a memory, passes you for turn, which is great. Or alternatively, you might be gaining memory back when you're swinging into security later on. Next ones, we do 4 of the BT13 Biomon. I really like this card because of its recycle effect on play if played by an effect. By returning one of your Christie Daemons back to your hand, this card then can basically warp Digivolve into a Garudamon for no cost. So you'll see later on what Tamers we run and what ratios we're working with, but this card is just very cool. I do like the effect overall, especially when you swing, delete the Digimon, get to play this out through one of the many effects you'll have. Return Christie, Digivolve into Garudamon, and then basically play Christie again. It's absolutely bonkers in not so many words. And then last but not least, we run 4 of the new Biomon from BT15. Now, this one doesn't have an on-play effect. This one has a start of main phase effect. And essentially you trash one card with, the relevant trait. So Avian, bird, beast, animal, or sovereign. You trash one of those from your hand. And then by doing so, you get to reveal the top 4 cards of your deck. And you get to add 1 red card among them to your hand. And then you return the rest to the bottom of your deck. So it's a very good card to have for turn 2, unless you've somehow worked out how to run the Yokomons in this deck, of which you could possibly do it turn 1. I'm just joking, you can't do it turn 1, but yeah, it's definitely a turn 2 card. It's a very good card, and the fact that it's inherited as well. When a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, you gain a memory. So basically the same as the BT11 Biomon, except it's not an on-deletion effect. One thing I did forget to mention is with this Biomon here, on deletion you draw 1 card. So it's a suitable card if you want to try and get some draw power in, if swing with a level 4 or something, but the overall, these are the 12 that I run. They seem to work fine for me, and this deck as a whole is bloody good fun. So I'll remove these and we'll go straight to your level 4s. Now, with the level 4s, again, we're primarily running the Biomon stuff sort of lineup. However, there is a little bit of a twist. So, first things first, we'll start with the Birdramon. Now, it's the BT11 one. So we all know what it does. It's got blocker initially. However, it's got an on-deletion effect. If you die, you can play a red tamer card with a cost of 4 or less. That's not just limited to Christie or Sora. That's any red tamer card. So, and you can play it for no cost. So it's a very good free of to have. I mean, I say this a lot in my videos, but your ratios work so however you best put them. So, you know, you could run 4 of these if you really wanted to. I don't think you need to. 3 seems to be enough. Blocker is something in this game that's easily, you know, you can get around it too easy nowadays. Whether that be with raid or having the ability where you don't get blocked. But yeah, I say a 3 of is probably more than enough. I don't think you need anything more than that. The next ones. So we have a 3 of the new Birdramon from BT15. So this is a when Digivolving effect now. So you get to return 1 red Digimon card with the relevant traits, essentially from your trash, and you can put it back into your hand. So it's a good recycle card, especially if you're lacking the pieces. Now, the reason why I don't run 4 is because of 1 card, Geogreymon. Now, I'll talk about that in a second, but Birdramon, just finishing off with BT15, it's also got a your turn effect in its inherited. It's once per turn, but when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, you get to gain a memory. So you can see where this is going. You know, you've got plenty of Biomons with the same effect. You've got the Birdramon now with the same effect. So it's effectively, you'll remove cards from your opponent's security stack and you're gaining a shed ton of memory. However, the reason why I don't play 4 is because of Geogreymon. We all know it was restricted for a reason, because it's a stupidly strong card, especially for level 4. But when Digivolving, you essentially search your security stack and you can play out a yellow or red Tamer that is spotted in your security stack. And then if you do, you get to recover +1. Its inherited's also quite handy. You know, it's a your turn effect, but when one of your red or yellow Tamers becomes suspended, you can then delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less. So it's good if you're going up against wide boards, because let's face it, most of the wide Digimon that get played are low DP. But I just find it's a good one-off to have anyway. The card is stupidly strong, and it's, you know, it does me wonders from times to time. I mean, it's only a one-off, so it's not always going to show up. And you'll find that by having one as well is just more than enough, because the aim of this deck is to, you know, to be able to play it at its full potential, which is going to be primarily, you know, the Biomon line. Geogray obviously doesn't digivolve from Biomon, so, or as far as I'm aware, but yeah, just a good one-off to have. I know it's restricted, but you could, it's up to you, but you could remove it and put in a 4th Birdramon of either one of these, or you could put something else in. And then lastly, now the reason why this video has been delayed for a while is because I've been trying to pick up these 3. They are ridiculous. I don't I don't quite get why the price spiked for these cards. I'm not seeing it played all that often. However, this was the reason why it was delayed. So this is Saberdramon. Now, it's a Digivolve cost of 3, so it's actually quite high in comparison to your Birdramons, but it's worth it. It comes with Raid and Retaliation, so you can use it as a kamikaze card if you need to. Additionally, its on deletion effect is, you know, its inherited on deletion effect, that is return you one of your red or purple Digimon from your trash and place it back to hand. So again, it's a good recycle card. But you can tell that the inherited effect is mainly a purple effect. Now, the reason why I run 3 of is because it's just a very good attacking card. If I want to try and get rid of something off the board that I think is going to be a threat, I will just take the swing with Saber. Good, you know, the fun fact is that it's got raid, so it can swing into anything, which is great. And if you've got certain Biomons or well, certain Biomon underneath it, and then naturally you're either going to gain a memory or draw another card. And the same can be said for the egg, which again, it's got an on deletion effect, and you get to return a relevant card from your trash back to hand, and that could well be you bring Saber back. But this is the level 4s I run. But yeah, just a 10 of I think's nice. You'll probably see a lot of that in my videos. The ratios always seem to be somewhat the same. So like 12 rookies or 10 champions or 8 ultimates. It's pretty much the same. And I find the ratios always work. But moving on, we'll go into our ultimates. Now, we only run 8, as I just mentioned. In this case, it's all Garudamon related. Now, I love these cards. But we'll start with the BT15 Garudamon for now. It's on play and when Digivolving effect. You can play out a red Tamer card with a cost of 3 or less and play it with no cost. It's on deletion effect as well. It deletes one of your opponent's Digimon with 6000 DP or less, so it's just a very good deletion effect, especially if you want to be a bit stronger early game. And then next up we run 2 of the BT11 Garudamon. If you're not familiar with this one, it's blocker, and its on deletion inherited effect is you may play a red Tamer. So it's exactly the same as the Birdramon from the same set. I run a 2 of purely on the basis that there's not often times where you're going to be blocking unless you're trying to utilize effects. But it's just a good 2 of. I don't think you need anything more. Depends on what your kind of play style is. Like you could take out another one and put a 4 of the BT13 instead if you like the whole recycle technique. Or alternatively, you could go the opposite direction. Maybe you prefer to block and utilize all those on deletion effects. It's up to you. But the last one is 3 of Garudamon Ace. Now this card is very much needed for this deck, I find. But we all know what Ace cards do, but in short, if it's your opponent's turn and they swing and you've got a level 4 in play, you're going to blast Digivolve into this one. It has an on play and when Digivolving effect. Effectively, you can play out a red Tamer with a cost of 4 or less for no cost. And it also has an all turns effect. When one of your Tamers is played, you get to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with blocker. There are quite a few decks out at the moment where Digimon have blocker, whether that's through an inherited effect or just generically, but it's just a good card. Especially if you want to try and get the Phoenixmons out nice and early. It's only a 4 cost to play, but otherwise it's a Digivolve cost of 3, which is quite high, but it's a level 5, so it's not exactly high when it's just a 3 cost. So I don't really know what I'm talking about, and just ignore exactly what I just said there. But yeah, just a good 3 of this card. The play cost of 4 is good enough for me, and sometimes it is sometimes, but you will brick, and ultimately it may rely on you having to hard play this. But if that means you've got the Tamers in hand anyway, you're sort of gonna be able to utilize it fully, which is ideal. But just 8 Garudamons, that's all you need. Next up, we have the level 6s. Now, we run a 4 of the BT11 Phoenixmon. If you're not familiar with this card, it only has a your turn effect and on deletion effect. It doesn't have any when Digivolving or on plays like the others. But your turn, when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack, you can activate one of this Digimon's on deletion effects. Now, bear in mind that a lot of the on deletions you've seen so far include inherited effects. So it can either play its own one, which basically is you get to play out a red Digimon card with a relevant trait in it.
And basically you increase it by 2000 DP for each red Tamer that you have in play. So it's just a very good 4 of.
The next one, we run a 2 of the BT15 Phoenixmon. Now this one does have an on play and an on deletion effect, but if your opponent has 3 or fewer security cards, you get to delete one of their Digimon with the lowest DP. But however, if they have 3 or more, then you get to trash the top card of their security stack, which is great. And the fact that it's not once per turn as well, which means you'd hard play it in some cases, depends if you mix it up with this. or alternatively you could choose to delete it by swinging into something bigger on the board. Again, another kamikaze type effect, but it's when Digivolving effect, however, is that you may play a red Digimon card with 5,000 DP or less, or one red Tamer card from your hand without paying the cost. So it's a very good when Digivolving effect, especially if you want to try and utilize the Biomons or the Bergermons. And when you combine it with the Tamers, which I'll show you in a second, you'll give them rush, and it may benefit you in the long run, especially if you're playing something like Saberdramon. So 6 of these is fine. I'll show you some techie options later, but there are some good options that you can run. Next up, Tamers. Starting with the new Sora. BT15, it's brand new. I did run a 4 of, but I think 3 is enough. You see it all too often, and it's very, very good. It's the memory setter that this deck needed. Start a turn, you start on 3 memory. All turns, it has an all turns effect in regards to when a red Digimon card returns from your trash back to your hand by returning this Tamer or the card, what's it called? By returning this Digimon, let me read it out loud. What we got? So, yeah, when a red Digimon card returns from your trash to the hand, by returning this Tamer to the hand, you may play one 13,000 DP or less red Digimon with the relevant sets of traits from your hand without paying the cost. Now, for each of your opponent's security cards, you remove 2,000 by the effect from the maximum DP played. So it's not necessarily a good early card, maybe later on, but it's a very good card in regards to recycling your deck and being able to play out certain cards. But like I said, a 3 of is more than enough for this card. I don't think you need to run 4 unless you're truly trying to put something together that works. But it's just a good 3 of to have, especially because we're trying to make room for other cards. The other 2, now we'll start with Christy, BT13. She has a starter main effect where effectively if you have a bird or an avian in play, you gain a memory. So it's a good, you could have these 2 on board and start with 4 memory, which is great. It's on play is the reason why I play 2 of her is because she gives one of your Digimon a non-deletion effect. Now when they die, you get to play out a Biomon from either your hand or your trash without paying the cost. And that's why she gels so well with the Garudamon from BT13. Because you'll warp Digivolve into this by using the Biomon. Then all of a sudden, you'll be returning her back to hand, but then when you Digivolve, you play it again. So it's just a very, very good combo. And then lastly, it's all probably expected, but we run 3 Akios. Now, her on play is effectively a searcher. Reveal the top 4 cards, and then you get to pick out a Digimon with vaccine in its traits and place it to hand. Now, she also has a your turn effect, where a Digimon is played using an effect. You can suspend her to give one of your Digimon rush for the turn. So, again, you could run 4 of her if you really wanted to, but you kind of have to make room for Sora. She is a memory setter at the end of the day, and for me personally, I prefer having the memory setter available over search power, just so I've got the memory there, and just in case I end up having to, if I'm in a bricky situation, at least I've got memory to try and work around it. However, this is just a very good card to have anyway because of the whole rush factor, and it's just amazingly good. But it really does depend on what your play style is. This deck can do a couple of different things now, which is great. But for me, I like the whole recycle element. So having these 2 sets of Tamers is great. And making sure I have enough Akios as well, just so I can use that rush effect is fantastic. But that's just 8 Tamers for the deck. I don't think you need to run any more. I'd be shocked if you needed more, to be honest. but yeah, just the 8 of is enough. Next up, we have our options. Now, to start with, we'll go Wings of Love. Now, it's a new BT15 card. It's only a 2 cost, and this could well be a very good card in any red deck, because if you want to reduce the value of the tamer that you're playing, even if it's by 1 cost, just play this card. Run this in your deck, 1 or a 2 of, it will come up, but you play it for 2, and then you can play out any red tamer card with a cost of 4 or less. And let's face it, there aren't any red tamers out there at the moment that you would play in the same deck that would be above 4. I mean, Marcus, we're obviously aware Marcus is 5 cost, but you're not really going to be using that with this. I couldn't really see why you would, but you would play a red tamer with a cost of 4 or less. You wouldn't be able to utilise the second part of its effect because you'd need Sora, but if you had Sora, and in this case we do, you get to return a red Digimon card from your trash and put it back to hand. So it's a very good card to have in this deck, especially for the recycle element. But it's also very good because you're getting your tamers out for a much less cost, and you know, putting down a memory setter for a cost of 2 is actually amazing. So I just find this is a very good 4 of to have. Its security effect as well is quite handy. You get to play a Biomon from your hand or trash without paying the cost, and then you get to add this card to your hand. So again, it's another one of those, being able to make sure that you have suitable cards ready for the next turn, or in some cases you might necessarily need that Biomon to then walk back into your Garudamon blockers or Garudamon to play out another tamer and absolutely pop. So it's a very, very good card, and this deck definitely needed it. Next up, some defensive cards. Just a 2 of a Crimson Blaze. With the way the meta is at the moment, you're playing a lot of Digimon by effects and you're going wide. This card stops that, especially for a turn. Now, you know, this isn't blue, so you can't use Sorai. So sadly, Crimson Blaze is the next best thing for red. Now, you get to reduce its cost by 1 for each of your opponent's Digimon, and it is initially a cost of 6. So in some cases, you might find you're playing it for 2 or a 3 cost. And then the next part of that effect is that they can't play Digimon by effects until the end of their next turn. So it's just a very good 2 of to have. You could swap it out for other cards, but I personally believe that Crimson Blaze is the card at the moment, especially with the way things are. That will go out the window, I think, when BT16 comes in and it becomes more stack heavy, but for the time being, Crimson Blaze is the card to go to. But that's it. That's all my options. Now, I haven't got the cards physically on me at the moment as I record this video, but I'll just ping the images of those cards in the video. But in terms of tech choices, now, with regards to Digimon, I think realistically the only tech choice I would consider is that in the form of a level 6, which is Marsbon from BT11. That card is stupid good. You know, it's got raid, and then it has an effect where if you essentially switch the target of an attack, you gain a memory for each red tamer that you have in play. It's also got blitz, which, you know, so you can swing post turn and get all that memory back. So I did used to run a 2 of in this deck because the card was just stupid good and it was recommended by a friend. And however, I've taken it out for the purpose of the whole recycle element for now. However, the more I test this deck, the more I scream I want a 1 of Marsbon. So yeah, I just think as a tech choice, maybe running a Marsbon would be ideal. And you can still search for it, which is ideal. So yeah, it's worth considering. Level 7s, you can still consider the Omnimon Blitz from BT5. It's still it's a great card. I love it. But it's, yeah, you could run a 1 of, but then that's also a 1 of piece of space that you aren't using for something else to gel with the deck. And I find it's not really necessary right now, especially when you've got the Akios, which will give your Digimon Rush. And the fact is, you've got plenty of defensive cards in this deck now. So it can be played for fun. And let's face it, this is not going to be a massively strong deck. But if you play it right, you'll certainly, your opponent's going to underestimate this a little bit. In regards to option cards, you can still use things like Gaia Force if you prefer more heavier type defensive cards. Gaia Force, you get to choose just one Digimon to delete. The problem I have with those kind of heavy hitters now is that there's too many decks out there that protect from deletion effects. And so Crimson Blaze for me is the more logical choice. And I think eventually this game is going to get to the point where you don't even need defensive cards anymore. And it will just be a more aggressive game. But they're the tech choices I'd recommend. The eggs, I mean, you can still use the old Yokomon if you really wanted to, but I just don't think it fits well in this day, anymore. Alternatively, for things like level 4s, you could probably still run the ST1 Greymon with the security attack +1, but it's, again, I mean, you're swinging with the purpose of hopefully deleting your Digimon, or if you don't delete it, you're then just going to utilize security effects, by trashing security cards or gaining memory because you've removed security cards. But it's also something to consider. You swing for 2 checks with a Bergermon, sorry, not a Bergermon, Garudamon or a Phoenixmon. It could go down well. You might be going up against a deck where you're not going to be hitting too many heavy cards in it, or it might not have any. So it's just a good techie choice. But that's my rundown of this deck. Like I said, it's not supposed to be super strong. It is great fun to play though, and it can be easily underestimated by your opponent. But these are the ratios I work with. They seem to work fine. Feel free to build it, play with it, see how you feel about it, or make your own tweaks or change up the ratios as you see fit. And ultimately, I would imagine you're going to have great fun building this and messing around with it. But feel free to like the video, as always. Subscribe to the channel, support it. Leave some feedback where you can. If you've got any cards that you'd like to throw into the mix, or what your ratios are on the deck itself, feel free to just comment on the video and let me know. I'm always open to ideas. And we'll play it by here. But we'll see what the next few videos are going to be. I can't tell you what they're going to be yet. But yeah, as always, appreciate the fact that you all watch these videos. And I hope it continues. Feel free to keep tuning in. And like I said, feel free to make your own feedback and let me know what's relevant, what isn't relevant, what your thoughts are. And I'll respond in kind, and we'll play by ear. But thank you very much again, and take care.